It's ban list season, baby! Hey guys, Otaku here, back with another video, and today we're going to be doing another ban list prediction-esque thing. I'll explain the rules later. But essentially, we are kind of in a ban list season again, and we've been in the current Forbidden Limited List update for about 2 months now, and we do have the NAWCQ in about 2 weeks, and I don't think we're going to get a list before the NAWCQ, but I have a big suspicion that we will receive it at the NAWCQ. The OCG just recently got their pre-Worlds update to their Forbidden Limited list, and typically, based on past trends, we usually follow suit with a one last update before the Worlds ban list is dropped. And seeing as Konami has been really running with the trend that they are releasing these Forbidden Limited lists while they are doing live streams, the NAWCQ is really the last opportunity to drop it, or they're just going to drop like one randomly at the middle of the night. Before we do jump on into the Forbidden Limited list, though, I have noticed that a great deal of you that are currently watching this video are not subscribed to the channel. So if you do like competitive-based content, whether that be in-depth guides or tier lists, consider subscribing to the channel, but also don't forget to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below your thoughts on today's video. Also, if you would like to further support the channel, consider joining my community Discord, following me over on Twitch, or using my TCG affiliate link or my Dueling Guard affiliate link. All links will be down in the description below. All right, so today's ban list prediction video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be less of a prediction because I feel like predicting what Konami's going to do is damn near impossible. Some things are obviously very obvious, like when Dweller was going to get banned, we all saw that coming, but it's very difficult to actually guess what Konami's going to do because they run the game, we do not. And also, we can kind of understand the trends on what they're going to do. For example, today's video is going to be heavily based around the fact that Konami's going to want to sell Justice Hunters, which means they're going to probably be banning or removing cards from the current format to make room for it, aka stuff like Mitsurugi, Ryzeal, and Malice. But again, I'm going to just give my input on more problematic cards, or cards that should come off the ban list, because there are a couple of them on this list, but just kind of give my input on some very problematic cards that should get hit in some manner, but also give my input on cards that just realistically a lot of people think are problematic when maybe they're not. The first card we're going to talk about is Deep Sea Minstrel. Now, Water is not by any means the best deck in the room, but it is one of those decks that, unless you're playing Water, you don't really look forward to playing against it. And that's because even though they just banned the access to Toad and the deck has a harder time just generically detaching Dragoons off of a generic rank 4, the deck still does some pretty toxic stuff. Now, this is one of those decks, too, that receives a whole lot of love in its community base, meaning that just by me mentioning the deck, I'm going to get slaughtered in the comments, but that's okay. There are 2 cards that I think are worth looking at or talking about in the upcoming Forbidden Limited list. I think Water is an almost fair deck, but I think it does 2 very unfair things, and one of those I think needs to be removed from the equation. The first one is Deep Sea Minstrel. I personally think this card should and possibly will get banned because it's just very unfair. Now, a lot of Water players play this card at 1 and then they search it off Dragoons. I don't agree with that, and I don't even play Water. My buddy plays Water heavily. He plays 3 Deep Sea Minstrel simply because if you open it, then you're not playing into Droll. You can actually rip that Droll without, you know, any consequence. So you want to increase your odds of being able to do that, and just searching this off of Dragoons then means that you get hit with Droll afterwards. But I find Deep Sea Minstrel to be incredibly unfair just simply because it can look at my hand, rip out 1 card before it even commits to anything, and on top of that, it does discard a Dragoons essentially in the process, so it's just like nothing but advantage. But I think the most problematic card, and this card I think is like the highest possibility of getting hit, is the Water Barrier statue. Because even if you do manage to like droll the deck can just set up Waterlock, and then that's a problem. The deck is very good at setting up very strong boards, even without the Waterlock, but on top of the fact it's hand ripping you, I think we do need to rip one of the problems out of the equation. Hand ripping is a little annoying, but if you droll them, it's a little harder for them to do that. So I think realistically one of these 2 is going to get hit, not both of them. I don't think both of them. There's also a very high chance that Konami just thinks Water is a fair deck now. I think if one of these cards is removed from the equation, Water becomes a lot more fair of a deck. And I think Water is one of those decks that has to be a fair deck. I don't think it should be allowed to be just an incredibly toxic deck. Let's talk about Fiendsmith real quick. So I think Fiendsmith has gotten to a point in the format. Now, there's probably plenty of people that'll disagree with me in the comments, but I think Fiendsmith has gotten to a point where we've just come to accept it, and it's not everywhere. Like, on release, it was everywhere. It was in every deck possible, but there are a lot of decks now that are not just cramming it in because they've realized that it takes a lot of extra deck space. It takes a decent-sized engine space in your main deck, and sometimes the trade-off's just not worth it. The OCG still has Engraver to 1, I believe. It might be 2, but I think, and my buddy actually brought this point up in a recent conversation with him, and I do agree with him on this. I think this is going to get the Kashtira treatment, because Kashtira has nothing hit. Now, yes, Unicorn was hit at one point, but it's no longer hit now, and everyone's calling for Fenrir's Head on almost every ban list, but I think this is just going to get the Kashtira treatment, where nothing's really going to get hit, and we're just going to kind of get better at playing around it. Like, we've gotten to a point where we're playing less Bestials in our main deck. Like, less decks are playing Bestials right now, because we've just kind of gotten used to playing around Engraver and his bullshit. So, because of that, I think Moon definitely is just not getting hit. If Engraver does get hit, and I think still to this day Engraver is the better hit of all the options, because Requiem just kills the entire engine entirely, and then Lacrima, the Crimson Sorrow, maybe to ban, because it's already a 1 of regardless, but again, that also kind of kills the thing. So I think Engraver is like the only option to hit out of like pure Fiendsmith rather than subsidiary cards. This card I think would probably get limited, but again, I don't see it. I genuinely don't. After having 3 Forbidden Limited List updates since the release of Fiendsmith cards, and nothing's been hit other than the common Lacrima, I don't think it's getting hit anymore, guys. I'm gonna be real with you. All right, let's real quick, before we start jumping into the real juicy bits of this list, essentially, let's talk about cards that are probably going to make their way off of the ban list in some form. Again, I don't think all of these will come off at one time. However, that being said, Summon Sorceress is definitely coming back, right? It has an errata. It now has a printed version of the errata. This card is definitely coming out off the ban list, right? Like, there's no reason it shouldn't at this point. Nightmare Goblin has been off the list in Master Duel for a hot minute, and it just came off the list in the OCG just recently. I think that's pretty much enough to say this card's really not going to do anything here in the TCG. I think it has been power crept to a good degree. I would say Nightmare Mermaid, but with Orcus support being out, maybe that's not the greatest idea. Zodiac Trident, again, I think this card is coming back. We just saw Barrage come back. We are realizing that a lot of cards from, past formats are starting to become very irrelevant in the current format. Trident, I think, will be good, and people will experiment with a Zodiac engine, but seeing as Ryzeal slowly making its way out the door, I don't foresee the Zodiac engine really being like super huge. Again, we will see experimentation, obviously, if Trident does come off the ban list, but I think it can, and I genuinely think we are to a point where it will. I think Barrage coming back was like a prelude to what's to come. Electromite, I think it's staying banned. I'm gonna be honest, chat. I'm gonna be real honest. Konami really just doesn't like pen decks. They've made it obvious with not only past like new released cards just being straight counters to pendulums, but the fact that Electromite hasn't come back on like the last 3-ish lists. It's even seen a reprint from Stampede, and this card still isn't back. Guys, just give it up. I think it can come back. I do think that. But Konami doesn't like pendulum decks. Like, let's just be real. All right, before we talk about the real main decks of the format, let's talk about these last 3. Droll and Lockbird. This is a card everyone's calling for its head for many, many formats. Like, this card has been on and off every time it's in the format. Every time it's a 3 of in the main deck, mandatory. Everyone's like, I hate this card, ban it. I hate blanket lingering floodgates. I kind of agree. I hated Shifter for the longest time. Even though Shifter's at 1, I actually still think he needs to be banned. I just hate that card. Just the idea that someone could run 1 and see it just pisses me off. But Droll, I'm a little less sympathetic for. I think Droll is fine, because Droll is not always good. Droll is also currently one of the few counters to the Mulch armies. Obviously, we have Called By, we have Ash Blossom, we have plenty of cards like Mistaken Arrest has been going around in the current format, which is just another Droll but lasts for 2 turns. but I think like Droll is in essence fine because it's not killing every deck in the format, it's killing the best deck in the format, and even then the best deck can play under it just fine. So I think Droll's fine. I don't think they're going to hit Droll. Lancia, even though I'm a Malice player, I don't think they're going to hit Lancia. I think Lancia should get hit, not just because I'm a Malice player. I think Lancia, funny because I'm using this argument because I just countered it, but I think Lancia is bad because it's a hard counter and it's a blanket effect for an entire turn, but it's a hard counter to any deck that wants to banish. Now, to be fair, there's not a lot of cards in the game that can counter banished focused decks, but decks like Ritual Beast, Flu, Malice, and a handful more don't like Lancia. Hell, even Crystron doesn't like Lancia. Like, this is a very annoying card for very specific decks, but at the same time, again, because it's so hyper specific for very specific decks, I don't think Konami's gonna ban a card that's super situational based on the format. Also, that being said, Malice and Crystron still see plenty of success despite this card existing, because at the end of the day, you gotta see it. Arpy's Featherstorm, I think this is going to get banned for a handful of reasons. One, I think it should get banned. Two, it's a very toxic card, but also we have Magnificestorming coming out, so currently, like, decks like Mitsurugi and Ryzeal can play this because they're playing level 4s, so they can make a rank 4 Castel and then just sit on this and then buy themselves a turn and then go into their next turn and kill you. But Magnificestorming can make this really easy. One of their main deck monsters is just a Wind-Winged Beast, but they can also just make Totem Bird, which is also a Wind-Winged Beast. Again, this is a card that will be good here pretty soon, like probably towards the end of the year when Doom of Dimensions comes out. So I think just if we hit it now, that'd be smart. However, based on timeline, there's probably another Forbidden Limitless before Doom of Dimensions, so we could hit it then. But I think this is going to be a very toxic card in the future. It's already toxic right now because of Castel, but just ban it. Just ban it. All right, let's talk the 3 best decks in the room currently. The Mitsurugi, Ryzeal, and Malice. Realistically, it's Ryzeal and Mitsurugi is the same deck, but Ryzeal variant's still running around a little bit. So I think realistically, let's think about this for a minute. I want everyone watching this video right now to have an open mind when I say this. I think Habakiri is getting banned. I know everyone's freaking out. They're like, oh, card's too new. Yeah, so was Lacrima. The difference here is that it's 1 rarity higher. Lacrima was a common. This is a super. Konami don't give a shit about anything under, like, ultra rare, essentially. And even then, like, sometimes they don't care about ultra rares. But this is a super rare. Konami's not really losing any money. I feel like there's a reason this was a super rare, too, because Konami knew this was going to get hit. But this card really does just too much. And I toyed around with the idea of maybe just limiting it, right? Like, just put it to 1, and then they see it less often. They really don't. Mitsurugi has a lot of ways to find this card. One, they're playing 7 Tachyon in some of their builds with Ryzeal, and I'm sure there's a way to find this with 7 Tachyon. But 2, they could probably just play more Aramasas, or Prayers finds this card. Like, there's a lot of ways to find this card. Like, fuck, King of the Fairlimps can find this card. There's many ways to find this guy. And again, the moment you have this card in your hand, it basically just reads win the duel. It gives so much advantage for essentially nothing. I think this card does way too much for the fact that it's a super rare. And the fact that it is a super rare only further, I think, pushes my argument that this card is very much ban-worthy. Lacrima was banned pretty quickly. That's because it was a common and also it exploited time rules. But that just goes to show that Konami doesn't care if it's a low rarity when it comes to the Forbidden Limited list, because it's low rarity, so it's not worth anything. People aren't losing money for it. This card's maybe worth, like, I think, $2 at most right now on TCG. So, like, if this card gets banned, no one's gonna be mad that they lost money. People are gonna be mad that Mitsurugi got worse, but that's okay. Mitsurugi was good without Habakiri. They'll just play more Ryzeal. That being said, if Habakiri doesn't get banned, then Prayers needs to go to 1. I think Prayers is also severely likely of getting hit. Prayers is a very strong card in of itself because just the ad alone is really good, being a quick play so they can activate it to dodge Droll, something that really hurts Mitsurugi. Prayers finding this Habakiri card in the draw phase and then Habakiri doing his thing in the main phase is insane. But also this card helps you dodge target negation like Veiler and Mourner and Imperms. Cards like those just being even better, and then also getting advantage off of that quite possibly it's a lot, to say the least. And on top of that, the fact they can revive from the graveyard, meaning that like you can just tribute a monster and then bring back the Mirakumo to nuke your opponent's board or something like that. This card does also way too much, and yes, it comes at a bit of a deficit because of the 800 life points or tributing a monster, but it's not enough, to say the least. I think Habakiri is going to get banned, or Prayers is going to get limited. I think one or the other. Let's talk about Ice and X. So I wanted to talk about Sword, but I think Sword is going to stay semi. Realistically, when it comes to Malice and Ryzeal, I think I wanted to say that I think they're going to backtrack on some of like the semis, like all those semis, and it's obvious that they did it like this on purpose, was just like pseudo consistency hits with the full knowledge that Alliance Insight was coming out a week later, and that they were just making room for the decks, essentially. Like Malice, all their ratios got turned into pre-sideboard ratios, and so it just made room for the Adignisters. Ryzeal cards, that just made room for the Mitsurugi cards that were coming out. But again, it was like pseudo consistency hits, and I want to believe that they're going to backtrack some of those with the knowledge that they're going to actually do actual hits for this ban list. But I could also see that because the TCG is fairly strict when it comes to banning and limiting cards, that they don't backtrack anything on this list. They just go harder on this list, and then on the next list, probably closer to the end of the year, is when we will see things backtracked a little bit. Like, I think White Rabbit will come back to 3 at some point. I just don't think it's this list. Obviously, the card in mention that's going to get hit in this next list is definitely Dormouse going to 1. There's no way this card doesn't go to 1. I don't think Malice has any cards worth like banning per se. And again, hear me out, because I'm sure I have a lot of Malice haters in the comments as well. Malice is kind of its own worst enemy. So first off, Malice has the silver bullet that is Artifact Lancia. So it already has a card that just one hit kills it, essentially. And yes, they can play under it, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But Malice also has like 2 one-card starters, essentially, which is Dormouse and Rabbit, both of which are highly susceptible to target negation, and people will be like, oh, well, just set a trap and dodge it. The trap in which people were setting most of the time was TB11, and we cut that. You can still set, like, MTP if you open it, and yes, a Bestial or March Hare, will also just make that, target negation null and void, but Malice is more susceptible to very specific interactions in terms of like target negation at the beginning of the turn, and just breaking. The deck does have a lot of cards that just do not get you anywhere, like March Hare plus the Bestial doesn't do anything. So the deck has a lot of very good hands, but then it also has a lot of really bad hands. And people are going to just say, oh, I'm defending Malice because I play Malice. But again, how many people here have played against Malice and they just won because their opponent didn't open a Malice card 2 games in a row? Not many people can say that about Ryzeal, because all of Ryzeal's monsters are 1-card starters. Minus, of course, Node and Star, but those are one-ofs when the deck has 6 other copies of guys that can start the deck off. And on top of that, Malice has less cards to find their 1-card starters. Like, they have AI Meet You for the backup, which can then find the Malice cards. They have Sign It, which discards a card, which is just a -1 if you get Ashed. Whereas Ryzeal, you don't gotta discard anything. You don't gotta do nothing. You just normal summon a guy and you search a guy. You got 7 Tachyon that can search a guy. You got Bonfire that can search a guy. Like, there's a lot more cards in Ryzeal that can find the 1-card starters. So back to the main point, I think Malice doesn't have a lot of cards worth banning, because if you ban a card in Malice, you might just straight up kill the deck. And I think, and again, this is an opinion, I think Malice is going to follow the same trend that it has in the OCG right now. The OCG limited Dormouse, and I'm pretty sure that's all they've done. Like, that they said one and done, just won the Dormouse, and the deck is still good. It's lived the ban list. Meanwhile, Ryzeal is nowhere to be fucking seen in the OCG. And I think a very similar trend is going to happen here in Malice. I think Malice is a lot more fragile if you ban a card, whereas Ryzeal is very fragile if you start going for consistency hits, which, as we saw, pure Ryzeal is really not that good anymore because Detonator's at 1. And on top of that, they just have less bodies. But I think Ryzeal will be making its way out of the competitive format door on this current Forbidden Limited list. There's a good chance we don't even see Ryzeal at, well, actually, no, we definitely won't see Ryzeal at Worlds because the stricter restrictions will take effect, and needless to say, Ryzeal will be butchered. But yeah, Malice Dormouse to 1, I think, is definitely something that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to backtrack the Field Spell or White Rabbit to 3 just yet. I think they're going to stay at 2 for Worlds and all that, and then after Worlds we might see a slight pullback depending on where Malice stands in the Justice Hunters format, because if it's still good, they might not backtrack at all. But let's talk about Ice and X'd, as I was talking about before I bridged into Dormouse quickly. Again, I wanted to talk about Sword, but Sword is the worst of the 3 in my opinion because it's a little more stricter on its special summoning condition, whereas X can just summon himself, and then Ice is the guy you want to normal summon. So it's like, Sword's kind of I think Sword will stay at 2 is basically what I was trying to get into with that long tangent. I think Sword will stay at 2. I think X is definitely going to 1. X is a just very powerful card, and I was saying this in the last Forbidden Limitless prediction, like before we got the one that actually hit Ryzeal and Malice. X being able to summon himself, send Aggregator, and Aggregator just alone can break a board. You just target negate the most important piece on the board. But X send Aggregator is so powerful, and then later in the turn you can just summon another one is really crazy. It's a little less prevalent now that there's 2, so because like you don't really want to get both out the deck, and it's a light, so it can be banished with a Bestial, which we are seeing less Bestials in the format. But I definitely think X is going to go to 1 this current Forbidden Limitless, and I do think Ice stays at 2. Ice is obviously the 1-card starter, but now Ice is normally, not all the time, but normally Ice is summoning Star so that they can get to Cross, so that way the duo drive is pretty much protected from just bullshit in terms of like hand traps or Droll and Lockbird or whatever. So I do think Ice stays at 2, and I guess I could have put Sword here because I think Sword stays at 2 as well. But I think X is going to go to 1. Detonator will stay at 1. And I think if we do see the hits that I'm predicting or thinking will happen when it comes to the Mitsurugis, I think like Ryzeal entirely will just be non-existent. Back to talking about Malice, backup Agnister I think is going to 1 as well. I do think this is going to happen. Backup Agnister is the sole reason that Malice can play under Lancia. Now, obviously, they do have to open the backup Agnister, or they have to open the AI Meet You. Typically, it's only like 1 or 2 copies of AI Meet You in the side deck. Sometimes people are playing it in the main. I do play the 1 copy in the main. But backup is such a incredibly powerful card for a multitude of reasons. One, if you just open Dormouse plus backup, you win the game. Like, no form of interaction is going to stop you, because if they nib you early before you get to like Wicked, or they nib you on Wicked before you can activate Wicked's effect, and you just have backup, then you're fine. You win the game. But backup is such a powerful card just as a whole. I think backup's going to 1. I don't think it's going to get banned because it is an ultra rare, and I don't think it's powerful enough to ban it per se, but I think this card is incredibly strong, and lowering Malice's chance of seeing it in the opener is really good. Now, Malice, of course, can obviously compensate and play stuff like Sign It or play AI Meet You in the main deck at like 2 or 3, but they're not doing that already, and they lost 2 of their bodies plus a field spell before all this, so we'll just have to see. But I do think that Dormouse is definitely going to 1. I think backup is definitely going to 1. Like, I think those are the big hits with Malice. A lot of people are calling for like White Binder's Head. The problem with the extra deck when it comes to Malice is that it's so hard to like hit the extra deck because it's a bunch of 1-ofs. They could probably hit Lingaribo to 1 because a lot of them are playing 2 Lingaribo, myself included. I don't think they're going to do that. But in terms of like the 3 Malice Link monsters, I think None of them are going to get banned. Like, obviously, White Binder is, like, the most frustrating one to play up against, especially if you're playing, like, a graveyard-focused deck. But, again, I don't think any of the extra deck monsters are going to get hit like YuGiOh did, because YuGiOh was playing, like, 2 Detonator. And that's really it for the Forbidden Limitless prediction video. Again, I didn't want to say it was, like, a prediction, per se. I more just wanted to talk about the problematic cards for the decks that are doing well in the current format, and really talk about, ideally, where they should be, more rather than what is going to happen. I think a lot of times in this video I did say I think this is going to happen, which in a sense is a prediction, but it's more rather I wanted to express where I think these cards should be and put them ideally where they are most likely to end up being in coalition with my opinion, like kind of coinciding with each other to come to an agreement, essentially. But let me know what you all think in the comments section below. I'm sure a lot of Water players and Malice haters will, of course, be railing me in the comments, but that's okay. Feel free to express your disdain towards my predictions here, or my my thoughts here, not my predictions, but my thoughts. And yeah, don't forget to leave a like on this video, and I will see you all in the next video. See ya.